Well, it's a great privilege for me to be here to be closing today for you, and it was delightful to hear some of the presentations earlier. And I'm going to start with a very straightforward admission, and that is that I'm not techie. So I've sat through a lot of the presentations today. I'm here as business. So I'm here to talk about what business is talking about and the impact of big data and where I see that sitting in the environment in Scotland at present. So for Scotland, there's a huge amount of activity going on. You'll be aware of some of this you may not. But I thought it might be more useful to you to get a context of some of that. And actually, we all owe, yet again, a huge debt of gratitude to Bill and his vision in pulling all of this together and the learning that Bill and Napier continue to contribute. And if we could see inside Bill's head, then I think we'd get some sense of the vision and the opportunity that there is in Scotland. And there might even be some more rock music there as well. So that's got to be a good thing too. So why have I put up digital resilience, cyber resilience and digital opportunity? Because at the moment we're hearing a lot from within business that there's a conflict about the two. In Scotland we have a digital strategy and separately we have a cyber resilience strategy. But actually some of the work that Bill and Napier are doing is all about pulling together that vision for Scotland. So I'm here, as I say, as that link, as Director of the Scottish Business Resilience Centre, but also I had the great privilege to set up the London Digital Security Centre last year. So I've seen very much what's happening on the big data side from both perspectives in business. So until we can start to talk in terminology, which is, I agree absolutely with what Rashmi was saying about how this fits with people, then actually we're going to be pushing water uphill in terms of how big data is understood and how it's used in practice in everyday business. So, in terms of what's happening here, I've put this up in terms of enabling versus protecting. It's a big debate at the moment in terms of how we look after business in Scotland. So is Scotland in business talking about big data? No, it's not. But it's talking about analytics. It's talking about what it needs to know. It's asking a lot of questions. So currently at the moment, working directly with Police Scotland, we're looking at what we can do to make all of that accessible to business. So when we start to look at what business is asking, it's asking very clearly, how can I be protected? How can I be safe? It was very interesting for me to be following Rashmi, because Rashmi took it from the analytics side down to the organisation side. And when I say I'm not technical, I am, however, a person. And I am a person with data, and I'm a person who deals with business with data day in, day out. So actually their understanding of what is going on and what they need to do to protect themselves in light of changing data protection, in light of some of the comments that have been made today. So for example, the commentary about removing business Skype. Actually, I deal with business every day who rely on business Skype, who want to be communicating much, much more, who depend, some of them, quite simply on a mobile phone to trade. So often it's very easy to get to the bigger side of analytics, and I'm very interested in working with all of you, and I've got a challenge for you at the end of this, in terms then of how we can make this really approachable to small business, because that is what Scotland is. We have a lot of ambition in Scotland, and we have a lot of ambition for innovation, and Napier, of course, has been a very proud part of that. But when we look ahead, do I see an appetite for that? Do I see business, government, policing reach forward with a hope to deliver that? Yes, I do. And I think that's a very important context for you, particularly when you're thinking about what's happening. So a question I get asked a lot is, what is the next shop window for Scotland? What's the next thing that Scotland can do differently, which can be used elsewhere, and which can really help to support business? And this is one of the main areas that I think we can really start to see a difference. So the understanding of the data that business is holding, how it's protecting it, and how, again, it can make that accessible. The two main questions that business ask every day is, where is my stuff? And how did they get it? beyond that, it goes to who has access to it and why. So actually, my data and the protection of my customer data is absolutely critical to understanding what's happening going forward in Scotland. Our messaging is wrong. We are not communicating the right level for small business at the moment. Why do I bang on about small business? Because actually in Scotland, it's 98% of the private sector. It's as high as that. I came from a meeting this morning in Glasgow where we were talking about the S size, the micro size of business that absolutely supports the economy in Scotland. And that is where you can all help in terms of the data, how it's protected, but also the analytics that are coming from what Rashmi was talking about and some of the other subjects today. And I put this up very simply because still we tend to start most presentations with a slide saying, today we're not expecting a fire alarm, but actually, as you, this audience, will very well know, much more realistic in terms of what is happening is the statistic that 3 times today, somebody is going to try and get your data. 3 times today, whether it's automated, online, whether it's a spam, somebody is going to have a go at your data. So we need to think much more about how we communicate the messaging about big data and about what it means to business. I was having a look online in terms of some of the areas of business where this is having most impact. And anybody interested in forecasting, so anybody with a predictive element to their business, of course, is fascinated by this. So I looked at the insurance market because a lot of the insurance companies are talking to me at the moment about a cyber product specifically for Scotland, and I think that will come. So in terms of the insurance market, I hadn't realized how quickly big data had moved to the top of their priorities. So in Germany, 80% of the insurers rate big data and big data security as their #1 priority. What does that mean for the UK? In the UK terms, it actually means that 65% of UK insurers will launch a substantial big data program in the next 12 months. So it's as high as that in terms of scale. So this is attracting a huge focus of attention that you will all know and you will all see from your technical perspective, but the smaller business doesn't always see that. Some of you will recognize what this is. Some of you may be wondering why I've put this up. But actually, this is one of the biggest pieces of data that there is about Scotland at the moment. And it's of great interest to me. This is the breakdown of the Scottish population. So even if you interrogate just 2 elements of that and put together the under 15s and the over 65s, you have got a population that has 33% within those categories. What does that mean? In terms of data, it means immediately you have expertise. You have expertise in where they're going to be living geographically. What's their spend going to be like? What's their social media going to be like? What's their interest going to be like? And in a business sense, we're now able to break this down very directly. We did some research recently with another academic institution just trying to understand why small business apparently isn't listening to the reality of the threats that are affecting them every day. This is very interesting. We haven't launched this yet. I'll come back to that one in a minute. So we haven't launched this yet. We'll probably put this out next week. But actually it showed that actually there's a really, really high level of awareness of threat to small businesses. It was an almost exponential awareness. It was much higher than we thought it would be. But people don't know where to go. They don't know where to get the messaging. Most people ask a friend, phone a friend, or they go to Google. So there's some really strong indicators here about how we need to continue together to engage. And you are the people that, from my perspective, absolutely have that expertise of interrogating of data, simplifying data, pulling out what really, really matters to make people resilient. And I do think actually the media have a very strong element to play here in helping people just to understand what that whole big data argument means. So what is it about? And actually some of you may have seen recently the BBC, Big Data is Your Face. I don't know if anybody saw this. Big data is your face. It was a very simple technique employed by a Russian student of photography who just went out and took photographs everywhere he went of young people. And then, using an application, facial recognition, he just went on, looked at the social media site Connectica, and was actually able to plot out a whole range of data. And the BBC became really engaged with this. And the reason that they became engaged was it was simple enough for everybody to get, and particularly for young people. So from my perspective, the media have a very large part to play in this. I mentioned the Scottish landscape, and I don't want to miss that because it's important. So with the Deputy First Minister, I launched the Business Resilience Strategy, the Cyber Resilience Strategy in November. That was a very significant step for Scotland. And I'll come on and talk a little bit about some of the live conversations that are going on, which Napier is very much a part of. So, at the end of last week, the First Minister was voted in for her third term. So that was the third term. Why do I say that? Am I making a political statement? No, I'm not. I don't know if any of you listened to her opening address. I don't know if any of you took in what she said about innovation in Scotland, but actually it was a really important statement. So just about her fourth point down, she came to innovation, which was a really strong support. And she said that her intention was to put support for innovation at the heart of our efforts to transform productivity of the Scottish economy. So if ever there was a place to put what you are doing, it is there. If ever there were a place to make the big ask and say we really do want to make Scotland that shop window, it is now. We've got Police Scotland here, of course. Eamon was speaking earlier, and Stevie Wilson, who's now jetted off to Europol. The new Chief Constable is also extremely interested in the whole cyber and digital discussion. So I met him recently as part of a group. He came from NCA. I'm sure many of you know this. I do think it's important that we all collectively think about the opportunities that we have now through institutions like Napier, through the work that Bill is doing, to really engage in a very different way. And I know that I've come at this from a very different angle from the majority of what you've heard today, but ultimately this is about people. It's about protecting people and keeping people safe, which is why I believe it's so important. We've seen some really strong examples of big data recently in the media. We've seen the developments in genome technology. We've seen how it can help to improve mental health. We've seen climate change predictions being used from space on a daily basis. So we have an opportunity to really push something. And one of the big asks that we have in Scotland is about skill. And it's about the learning and the training that Bill is so actively involved in, and actually keeping those skills in Scotland. I work with a lot of ethical hacking students. We're a close partner to Bill's Cyber Academy, and keeping those skills in Scotland is a really hard ask. But if we want to do these things, then that is what we need to do. And the discussions with Police Scotland are a big part of that. I'm going to end with two concepts, and I'm going to set you a bit of a challenge, which I'm really happy if you come back to me on. I know you've had a long day, but I do want you to think about this because it's important. There's two big discussions that you'll be hearing publicly in Scotland in the next couple of months. The first is about cyber triaging. Now, Eamon talks about the scale of reporting on the policing side. And the fact is that if everybody today picked up the phone and said, I think I've had a breach, I think I've got a problem, then there would be real issues, just in terms of capacity. And should we expect policing to deal with all that? I don't think so. I think, again, there's an opportunity for a partnership for small business with academia, with a number of partners in industry to actually help to solve that and to be an answering case for any of the inquiries and the advice that's needed. Above that, there is the concept for a cyber hub. I'm leading the business enablement group of the cyber strategy for Scottish Government, and I'm also going to be leading on the discussions on the cyber hub, and I am going to be asking people's views. The vision for that, which we don't have time to go through today, but you will be hearing about, is genuinely accessible services for everybody in Scotland, whether that's business or citizens. So if you want to go from the very basic to I've locked myself out, I don't know how to do this, up to I'm actually dealing with a live ransomware attack, and then the analytics supporting that, working very closely with Police Scotland, with research, with a whole range of industry. And I will be asking industry to be closely involved in this, and I hope that you'll take that. So I wanted to end, I've just got a pie chart there to show you what it means, but academia I see as being at the heart of the Business Hub for Scotland. I'm just looking at Jamie in the audience there. Jamie said to me last night, actually, you know, Napier was looking at this 4 years ago. It was, and a whole lot of that model can come straight forward. And I think it's as relevant today, Jamie, as it was then. But my challenge to you, because I've heard a lot today in terms of experts, the knowledge, the analytics, the background, the scale of what is being collected. But if we are really to make Scotland safe, Scotland business safe, and Scottish people safe, then I want you to help me to think about how to translate that into what they need to know. Because Rashmi was absolutely right. Most of them have almost negligible spend on security, and boy, are they the ones that we need to protect. So I hope you've had a great day today. I'm going to hand over to Bill to finish, and thank you very much for allowing me to be with you.